Hey y'all, Bynx here, and welcome to Bynx Bants, our weekly series where we go over everything Marvel Snap, starting of course with our featured section, My Absolute Best Cooks. I've been cooking Marvel Snap decks almost daily for over 3 years at this point, and I think that there have been times where I've just thrown a lot of things together and nothing really makes anything happen, but being innovative and trying things new every single day has also caused me to create some decks that I'm either really proud of, had pretty profound effects on the meta, things that have actually gotten me really big accolades as far as things that I've accomplished. And I'm so excited to share them with you. We have 7 decks for you today. We have a top 5, and of course, we're going to start with some honorable mentions, starting with Enjoy Your Present. This deck is so awesome. This version I played on November 2024, but there were multiple versions before it. The essential goal of this deck is to give your opponent a destroyer and make it destroy their entire board. A really cool and interesting concept that's very hard to pull off. Actually, most recently I did it on Christmas of this year. I did a version of very similar to this one actually to do it. But what you want to do is you want to get a destroyer discarded with this version, and then you want to either discard it with Moon Knight or Lady Sif, so it's your only card in your discard pool. And then you have to get a Fenris Wolf down. You activate the Fenris, or you put the Viper over and you activate the Fenris Wolf, so it actually activates on your opponent's side, brings the destroyer on their side, and blows up their whole board. Lots of problems with this deck. There's some weird things like Ghost used to make it so you'd always go last. That was to make sure that they didn't like play out cards after the destroyer went off. We have Killmonger to like mess up their side. There's other ways that you could do this too. It used to be really hard to do. You used to have to play armor in a lane and then get the destroyer down in that lane. And then you would you would use Viper, and then you'd hit Odin on top of that lane, and you just have to hope that the order that it would go in would be to hit the Viper first. Then Viper used to not target your lowest cost card. It used to be a random card. You then have to 1 in 3 that the destroyer goes over, and then it would destroy your opponent's side of the board. Then when Viper got changed to your lowest power card, there was versions of it with Agent Venom and Bass to make the destroyer worse. That was always the lowest card in the lane. And then once Fenris Wolf came out, this version came out. This has been a deck that I've kind of been part of innovating and changing around every time it's popped up. Very interesting, very funny deck. Never going to win you any games, but it's a really cool deck that I helped in multiple stages of it to make playable versions of it, which I think is really fun. The next one that we have is the Scream Galactus deck. This deck is awesome. I feel like this deck kind of flew under the radar when I built it the first time. But what I really love about this deck is that it is a Galactus deck that utilizes like 2 completely different strategies to both like be able to win without Galactus and to like confuse our opponents and make them think that there's no chance that they're getting Galactus. This deck uses Super Giant in a really cool way. You can either have Luna Snow or Jennifer Kale down. You then Super Giant and you play Galactus on 6. And then in that Galactus lane, you can either like send a Hobgoblin that way. You could Cannonball a big card out of that lane and then use Ghost Spider to pull Cannonball away. You can like Spider-Man that lane and put Hobgoblin so that you know that there's going to be space, and then Galactus comes off at the end of the game. But really why I love this deck is that it was kind of just like a lot of different tools that I put together in a very unique and interesting way. This deck even has the Invisible Woman in here to do the really ridiculous line of having Invisible Woman, and then underneath that you play Spider-Man, Hobgoblin, and Galactus. But you Ghost Spider the Invisible Woman at the very end so that then those 3 cards just go off all in a row at the end of the game. Lots of really fun things in here. I thought this was just such a cool and innovative deck. I will say the pictures are going to look a little bit bad. I had to change some of the dimensions of some of them. It's very hard to visualize cards now because they all look very different than they usually did from this. But this is from July 2025. Really cool deck. Still works to this day. So this is probably the deck if you're looking for one to mess around with. This deck is super awesome. So going into our top 5, in the number 5 slot, we have Bastion Spectrum. This was played in September 2025. Why I believe that this earned a top spot is twofold. First of all, Bastion was just this card that came out that I was really excited for. I think that it does a lot of really interesting things, and it's a way to add different versions of cards into your hand than there normally would be. Like you can get like a 2/3 Iron Man with this list. Well, not with this list in particular, but with the Bastion. So there's some really cool things that are in here. Also, there's a really neat idea. As you've seen either previous Bynx Bants or you've watched me, you know I hate Mobius, but this Mobius is actually an offensive Mobius. So Sam gives you that 0-cost shield. That's a 0-cost ongoing that's on the board. And if you have Mobius down and you Bastion, you actually get a 0/3 version of that shield down. So this deck is using Mobius as like a offensive weapon, which I thought was really unique. But generally, this deck is just built around a package of Quinjet, Victoria Hand, Bastion, Moon Girl, and Moonstone to be able to just get multiple copies of things. You kind of have some energy reduction with Quinjet in there built in, as well as Victoria Hand to make those cards a little bit stronger. And then you have Spectrum to kind of finish things out. But really fun. I made a lot of different versions of this. But the other reason I'm really proud of this deck is that this is one of the decks that ended up becoming the most played deck of the month. This very first version that I had built of it gained a ton of popularity from having good stats on Untapped, and actually became the most played deck in September of 2025. So just really proud of identifying a very cool like idea that you can do with this card, using it in multiple different ways, not only this deck, but then this deck having that power to really affect the meta. I was really proud of. Moving on to number 4, we have Galactus Ramp. So this deck looks completely different than a lot of these cards do now. This was played in August of 2023. Not only did I really like playing this deck, I'd played it quite a bit back in 2023. I really loved Ramp. Go over why this is way different than it might work now. Like this deck would not work now at all. Essentially, there was really only 2 ways to ramp up energy back then. You know, pre Luna Snow, pre Jennifer Kale, pre all these different cards, and that was Electro and Wave. So the deck would be built to play either Electro or Wave on turn 3, and then essentially use that to play big cards for the rest of the game. So Electro had the same effect that it did now. Wave used to just make every card cost 4. It could also be a little bit disruptive. But essentially what you would want to do is either get out a early Sandman, which used to make it so that both players can only play 1 card per turn. Basically, getting that out early is by far the best thing that you can do to completely suffocate your opponent while you have all these really big cards. And then use combinations of cards to work really well. Leader grabs the biggest card your opponent plays. You can then Odin it. You can play like Doom and Odin. You could play like Black Panther and Zola it to get really big cards in those lanes. This deck also just ran Galactus as this a backup plan in case things go a little bit wrong and you want to try and like find this way to just like wave Galactus. Then you could even do something like Sandman into like Leader to steal whatever card that they play and still get ahead. Or just play like Black Panther Odin on top of that Galactus lane afterwards. But the real reason why this deck is on here is because this is the deck that won me the very first Conquerors competition. So there's been a lot more like competitive Marvel Snap recently with like Golden Gauntlet and things like that. But really back then there was no competitive Marvel Snap, and Conquest had just come out. And they put together this big content creator tournament to see who could win an Infinity Conquest fastest. There's 20 people in there. I literally only played Infinity Conquest 1 time prior to that. And even through all of that, I was able to get a legendary run with this deck. There's a great video about it that I made that kind of does some like summoning salt stuff in it too, that you can find on my channel. It's one of my most popular videos. But man, that was just such an amazing moment for me. For that tournament, I had like practiced this Thanos like Legion deck. This is right after Legion had come out. I was pretty happy with it, and I tried to make it work, and then it wasn't really working. And this is kind of like my comfort deck back then, just a deck that I knew I could play really well. And when you like take away decisions from your opponent, you can really use mind games, which tends to be one of my biggest strengths as a player. And I jumped over to this deck and I won an Infinity Conquest right away. I think I was in like 3rd or 4th place. And then I decided to just play this deck in Infinity Conquest and snap on turn 1 every single game. And we basically just cleared out a Conquest. I think we lost 1 or 2 games the entire time. We were able to take the crown and be the very first official Marvel Snap tournament winner. That is me. That's pretty cool. So this deck was a deck that I kind of championed back then as being a little bit better than people think. I think ramp was still pretty bad back then, but just being able to take a deck that fits my playstyle super well and pushing it into this more competitive side, I'm unbelievably proud of what I did with this deck, and a very, very fun and interesting deck to boot. Moving on to number 3, we have Infinite Agatha. A bit of a theme that you're going to see with these last few is a lot of them are ones that I was able to win something pretty impressive with. This was played on October 2023 during my very first subathon, and I was able to win an Infinity Conquest with Agatha in my deck. Now, if you haven't been playing Marvel Snap for too terribly long, you might think like, oh, okay, Agatha is a pretty reasonable card. You know, you are really easily able to get it out of your hand, and it only affects you on odd turns or even turns, so it's not really that bad. No, Agatha used to affect your deck the whole game. The only way that you can get rid of Agatha's effect is by getting her out of your hand, and it just wasn't really that consistent back then because you didn't get to choose which cards you played. You had to have Agatha just randomly pick the cards to play out. So the way they used to try and play Agatha quote unquote competitively would be using things like wave, or if you play wave on 3, your Agatha always chooses to play herself if able. So Agatha would cost 4, she'd play herself out on 4. You can either Lady Sif on 3 to get Agatha out of your hand, or the monster card Loki, which used to be a 3/5 that changed your cards in your hand to cards from your opponent's deck and gave them -1 cost. Absolutely broken, insane card that they created. But Loki would also work really, really well as a card that you could play on 3 and then shift your hand. And then the rest of the deck was just powerful cards. And like these Agatha decks used to be so restrictive because you really couldn't play anything lower than 3 costs that you wouldn't play out automatically. Like Domino was in here as it was just a way to get some power onto the board, even though it made it slightly less consistent. But with 3 drops to play out, you couldn't play any other 2 or 1 drops because then Agatha could accidentally play the wrong one and ruin your game plan. So everything else had to be bigger than that. And you know, we used America Chavez in here. This card used to stay in your deck, so it would give you a little bit more control over which cards that you drew. We would use Ghost Rider to re-pull Agatha out. We had like Iron Lad in here because it could hit some pretty powerful cards like Jubilee or a Devil Dinosaur. And then the Devil Dinosaur was just kind of like a points card that we had in here. Really just a pile of cards, but back then you had to play Agatha like that because it was so hard to get rid of her effect than it is now. And just really, really awesome to get over the finish line with this. This is during the first subathon. It was just kind of a goal that I had during it to try and win one. And we were able to get over it. I don't think too many other people I've ever seen were able to win an Infinity Conquest with that previous version of Agatha. So it's another notch in my cap that I'm really, really proud of building and finding this Agatha deck that can get you over the finish line. Moving on to number 2, we have Necro Bouncer. Boy, oh boy, do I love this deck. Necro Bouncer was when Morgan Le Fay first came out. I'd kind of started to help, and there was a couple of other people who were kind of piecing like this similar style of deck together where you use like Killmonger and Bullseye to discard 1-drops, and then you pull them back into your hand with Morgan Le Fay. But I really liked using like bounce aspects of this as well, so being able to like just kind of be a bounce deck. You don't get the Morgan Le Fay. And this deck I played over 150 games of. I just played so much of this deck because I knew that it wasn't that strong, but there was something about the way that you could play and piece together this deck that felt really, really cool when it was able to get pulled off. I've made some adjustments to this, especially since Morgan Le Fay has changed, but this deck kind of fell off pretty quickly. It was just really vulnerable to Killmonger, and while you could get some really good things going with it, it wasn't like perfect by any means. But this is just one of the decks that I'm incredibly proud of. If you're interested in this deck, it's a little bit out of date because they've changed Morgan Le Fay since, but I do have like a full breakdown of Necro Bouncer. This is like the only deck that I can even think of that I've ever like wanted to do like a full deep dive on why I chose all the cards and why I think that it's effective. It was just a deck that really brought my love back to Marvel Snap last year. Just one of those cards that come out and decks that gets created that gets you like excited to play and try and innovate and do some cool things. So I was really, really proud of this deck. Really, really fun. Earned the number 2 spot on the list. And the number 1 deck that I'm proud of for my cooks is Dark Dino. A lot of really important reasons why this deck is so like pinnacle to me, and something that I'm so incredibly proud of. First of all, this is the deck that I got my very first infinite in. It took me a super, super long time to actually reach my first infinite. I was always playing different decks every single day. It wasn't really a big goal of mine to hit infinite. I would more make content plays than trying to snap and be as competitive as possible. But this was a deck that I built that it just felt so strong. And going towards the end of the season, I felt like it had a really, really good chance of being able to get me there. And then I went on a 10-0 win streak when I started a stream that got me up to infinite for the very first time. Another thing that I'm really proud of with this deck, this is actually the very first deck that was ever featured in the Marvel Snap app. They try and like do some things where they like highlight videos and stuff like that from content creators. And the main thing, they've kind of went back and forth on how much they actually put effort into doing that. But when they first started doing it, this was the very first video that was shown, the very first deck that was ever featured in the Marvel Snap app itself. This deck also became one of the most popular decks on the ladder for quite a while until some cards got changed around. People would make one or two changes here or there, but the general core of the deck was still really, really great. The way that the deck would operate was Zabu was a 2/2 at the time that would make your 4 cost 1 less. You'd want to try and get Zabu down. Darkhawk was a 4/0 instead of where it is now, so it was much cheaper to get off, as well as Rock Slide being a 4/6 that also had a little bit more power and was able to push some rocks into your deck. Shang-Chi was just by far the most played card in the deck, or in the game. You just kind of have to have these ways to go after it. Then you had Devil Dinosaur, as you're having all these cards that add cards to your hands. Things like Sentinel is such a crazy thing to imagine being in a deck like this nowadays, but we just didn't have the options back then to have really, really good things to put in your hand. We have Sentinel. We have Maria Hill, which used to give a 1-drop. So she used to be a 2/3 that gave a 1-drop in your hand. Now she's a 1/2 that gives a 2-drop in your hand. I actually really like the old version of Maria Hill. It kind of reminded me of Kate Bishop, where it's just like you get a pretty good play, and then you get something that can give you some value later. Agent Coulson here to get some random cards. And then the top end of the deck was Doom. I felt like Doom was such a good card to finish this deck out with. Not only was just getting 5 power in 3 lanes just so powerful back then, but you could kind of just like play out cards, get Darkhawk in one lane, get Devil Dinosaur in one lane, and then like Dr. Doom. And this deck, the reason I think that this deck works so well is because it was kind of Shang-Chi proof. You could get Shang-Chi'd while you're playing this, but the idea is that you're putting out so much power that you don't really have to worry about the Shang-Chi nearly as much. And then like, man, there's just some devastating things that you could do on the final turn back when Zabu was this 2/2. Like you could play like Darkhawk on 4, Devil Dinosaur on 5, and then with Zabu down, you could play like Mystique on that Devil Dinosaur and then Shang-Chi a lane. You could just do some really devastating things, but yeah, this was such a cool cook I put together. I was one of the first people to figure out like this combination of using these 2 ongoing cards, marrying them with Mystique and figuring out the curve of it. Became one of the most popular decks in the game, was the very first deck featured on the Marvel Snap app, and was the deck that got me to infinite for the very first time. So my favorite cook of all time has to go to Dark Dino. Well, thank you so much for doing a little trip down memory lane there and talking about some awesome decks. I really, really love that. This is definitely one that was a little bit more for me. But let's move on today with today's docket. We're going to be talking about the Dragon season, which just got announced. We got Xiao Lao, the Undying, Dragon of the Moon, and Lockheed coming to Snap this week. We're going to talk about Aurora last week. We're going to talk about some other news and updates that are here. And then we're going to do a little bit of my goals for 2026. On the 31st of the year last year, I did a sit down and just did a really like long look at like what I did over the last year, what I think went well, what I didn't think go well, and then I made some goals for this year that we'll talk about at the end of the show. So let's start talking about the Dragon season, including the series or the season pass card, the Xiao Lao the Undying. I might be saying that wrong. Don't get mad at me if I am. It is a 5 energy, 8 power card with the ability on reveal, give the last character you played +3 power for each turn you play. Where are my headphones? I don't know why I'm wearing my headphones. I'm going to start taking them off whenever I realize that I'm wearing them during these. On reveal, give the last character you played +3 power for each turn you played 2 or more cards, and then it gives that nice little +0. I love that they've been doing that. First of all, just random tangent. I love that they've been doing that so much more in Snap, is like having additional information given to you on the cards, because sometimes there just had to be like ways that you'd have to like think about it and stuff like that. But I feel like they've made quite a few changes recently to make that easier. I would say for the average person. But man, this card is a absolute powerhouse. I mean, even if you only have 2 turns where you played 2 or more cards, it's still just a 5/14, and then anything you get on top of that is gravy. I think that this card is especially devastating because you don't know which way that power is going. So what I would imagine for a deck like this is that you're going to have several 1-drops, and then the final turn you want to play Xiao Lao and a 1-drop. And you can either play Xiao Lao first and buff the final card you played on turn 5, or you can play the 1-drop first and then buff the 1-drop and attack 2 lanes basically. So man, I think that this card is going to be an absolute monster of a card. I think that you're going to be seeing a lot more Thana. You're going to be seeing a lot more Kitty once this comes out. I don't know. I don't know what to do to deal with this card. I feel like this card every single time it's going to give something +9 and be an 8 power card. And it's going to be very confusing as to where it's going to land. Sometimes it'll even give 12 power. Boy, oh boy, I think that this is going to be a massive card for that like Kitty Thana mid-range style deck as just this nuke finisher where you have no idea where the power is going to lay out. Really, really awesome card. I think that this card is going to be meta shaping. I definitely think that this card is going to kind of have to be a card that you have to worry about and think about a lot whenever you're building decks. I just really do think it is that strong for that mid-range style of deck. We're going to see a big resurgence there. So super, super excited for Xiao Lao the Undying. Then we have the super premium season pass card, Dragon of the Moon, a 3 energy 2 power card with the ability on reveal, deal 1 power from even costed cards in all hands, which would be crazy if there was more than 2, but usually you're just going to get 2. So I'm not sure about this card's power level. Like realistically, you want it to be at least a 3/6 after you steal all those cards, and then hopefully you want it to be only stealing from your opponent's side of the board. You know, in like the video they showed using Master Mold, which I think is kind of like an interesting idea to give them cards and then steal power from it. I personally don't think that that's going to really like push the needle. Maybe there's some Ronin Master Mold style stuff with this that could work, but I'm not super convinced. I really think this card is going to be a miss. Like it's just so weird, right? Like because you can think about it in like a Affliction style deck. Maybe an Affliction style deck, it's not too bad if you're just trying to get more afflicted cards. It's like a better Scorpion sometimes. And then maybe you have Luke Cage to not make hurting your own cards be as strong. I don't know. This card just seems like from a power level perspective, they were very held back with what they're doing on it. I don't know what that's going to be. I think it will also take playing this card enough to realize, like, on average, how much you're going to get from your opponent's side of the board, because it is something that's completely hidden from you. Also, it's flipping after your opponent played their cards for the turn, so you're not going to get those cards that they played. Maybe they put cards into their hand and it's okay. Not really sure. Interesting card. I don't think that this is going to be a must-buy by any means. It's probably going to be a buff target if I had to guess. But an interesting card nonetheless. And then moving on to the Series 5 card for next week, we have Lockheed, the 2 energy, 1 power little baby dragon with his little baby dragon fireball. Has the ability end of turn. If you played a 1-cost card this turn, inflict an enemy card here with -2 power. It is an end of turn ability. Maybe there's some thought processes behind this being in like an Aurora style deck. You already want to play quite a few 1-cost cards with that Aurora style deck. There's not too many end of turn cards you're already playing with that. Maybe that's something that interests you. I don't see this being like an Invisible Woman style card, because there is that additional thing that you have to do with if you played a 1-cost card here this turn, afflict an enemy card here with -2 power. Also, with multiple afflicting cards coming out at the same time, with this card and the other card, you might be seeing a little bit more Luke, especially because Phantomax was a card that came out as well. So really interesting to see where this ends up top to bottom. I do not think that this is a good card. I think that especially the randomness of afflicting just any enemy card there can hit like the same one twice if you're trying to get Ajax triggers or like High Evo Abomination triggers. Going to be a little bit more inconsistent in that way. But this just seems like a card that doesn't really have the power level. It also does like kind of have some built-in synergy with like Shallow the Undying. You're playing a Kitty style deck. You know, you play this card in Kitty on 2, a 3-drop in Kitty on 4, or this card in Kitty on 2, a 3-drop in Kitty on 4, a 4-drop in Kitty on 5, and then Kitty in the other card. So maybe it makes its way into the Shallow the Undying style deck. It just depends on how many other 1-drops they have. But I think like these two cards, I just don't really feel like are going to be super impactful, especially because I feel like Shallow is going to come in and be this incredibly impactful card. So it might kind of live in their shadow there. There's also a spell that might be coming out in Series 4, but I saw multiple, like some people are saying that the Series 4 is coming out now, and some people are saying next week. So I try not to just jump on those if I'm not 100% sure. So we will touch on that card next week. Then a couple things. We're not going to talk about Phantomax because we never talked about it. I think Phantomax is kind of iffy because we did skip a week last week. So we're just going to jump in and talk about Aurora, which isn't last week's card, but it is a card that came out when I last did Bynx Bants, which is the 6 energy 6 power card with the ability on reveal, give one of your other on reveal cards at each location +2 power before ongoing activate and end of turn. I was pretty sure that this card would not be very good at all. I thought that this card was going to super flop. Felt like it was going to be a little bit too hard to get set up. It's going to be kind of hard to get the energy to be able to play enough cards and play Aurora. Didn't seem like too many of the cards that are hitting like multiple things actually work that well, but a lot of people have found some really, really strong Aurora decks. It's just kind of a big finisher for any kind of deck that's doing a bunch of different things with activates and ongoings. Use things like, powerful end of turn cards like Hydra Bob and Black Cat, because you can just kind of get them out and then they're going to get buffed up by Aurora and get even stronger. Activate cards that you don't see nearly as much are going to get used with this card. So it ended up getting 0.09 cubes per game, 52.3% win rate, and 5.9% popularity. Top 50% infinite the last 7 days. And I think that I was wrong. I thought this card was really going to flop. I thought a lot of people were going to be excited for it, try a lot of different things with it, and was going to kind of not super go great. But people figured it out. People were able to crack the code and find some really, really powerful Aurora decks, and that's awesome. Always interesting to see how these cards come out compared to what I would predict with them. So really, really cool card. Hope that you got your hands on Aurora because a lot of people have made a lot of really powerful decks with it. Let's talk about some news and some upcoming events. One thing I didn't build a slide for, but I do want to mention is that if you're going to be getting the season pass, make sure to use the web shop. We're doing another one of the like promotions where if you buy it through the web shop, you get an additional Series 5 collectors pack. So huge, huge value to be able to do that. So just make sure you do that. And then for the upcoming events coming up, we have a High Voltage Overdrive, which is going to be January 11th through January 18th. High Voltage Overdrive is the version of High Voltage that's even more crazy, and it has a bunch of like random things that'll happen towards the end of the game that I will be honest with you, I never really pay attention to, and then they happen and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But High Voltage, always a fun way to play Marvel Snap, especially if you're just like sitting on the couch. You just kind of play out really big cards, big crazy things happen. They also have a card that you are able to get with High Voltage Overdrive, the Dragon Lord, which is a 5 energy, 5 power that says play a card from your hand here, which is a very interesting card that's going to be coming out for free or able to be gotten for free with High Voltage Overdrive. Make sure to mark that on your calendar. Get that awesome card. And then we're also going to have the return of Sanctum Showdown, January 25th through February 1st. More variants and cosmetics, I think, is focused on that end. But some really, really cool events coming up here in Marvel Snap. And the final thing that we want to talk about today is the Year of the Bynx 2026. I've been doing a lot of just kind of like internal thinking about how to continue to improve as a content creator and to how to just improve myself and improve the content to make this channel as successful as possible. So like I said, at the end of last year, 31st, I dug down and I went through like a list of all the things I was really proud of that I did over the year and talked about what I did well and what I didn't. I think the biggest thing that I noticed is I completely went away from YouTube Shorts, which is something I don't think I should have done. I think that short form content is continuing to grow and it's something that people like and they like to consume. and it's a great funnel for people to come in and watch these longer form content. You know, a lot of people that I talked to have said like, hey, the first time I saw you was on shorts, and then I ended up being, you know, a Twitch viewer or a YouTube viewer and different things like that. That was the biggest thing that I saw. And then really it's just like putting the pedal to the metal and putting out more content. I think that last year I took a big focus on my health. And if you've been watching throughout the year, you saw I lost a bunch of weight last year. I got medicated for certain things. I got a surgery done that I'd been holding off for a really long time. But last year, I really felt like I put a huge emphasis on trying to improve my health. And I think that I did great in that. And this year, I really want to put a massive emphasis on trying to make being a career content creator something that I can do a bit more comfortably and with a bit more confidence. So trying to basically build really good habits, trying to be much more consistent with the content that I produce and put out there, trying to just improve my craft. So just quick breakdown of like the goals that I ended up breaking down after, you know, doing a lot of introspection. For January in particular, we're going to be trying to do 20 YouTube videos, 20 shorts, 20 streams, and 4 tier 3 hangs. You know what tier 3 hangs are on Twitch. There's a higher level to subscribe called the tier 3. We have a bunch of awesome tier 3 subscribers over there. Per month, we do a hangout. Towards the end of last month, I got a little bit behind that. So we'll be doing one every single week, starting with this Thursday night. So if that's something that you're interested in, sitting down and playing some video games, your boy Bynx, consider looking at 3 sub. So it was more for January to just kind of get everything off to the right push going this year. But my big overall goals is to hit 60K YouTube subs. I pushed up to 50K really quickly when Marvel Snap kind of exploded and my popularity exploded. And since then, it's kind of just hovered between like 53,000 and 55,000 pretty much the whole time. Kind of gone a little bit up and a little bit down as people like lost interest in Marvel Snap overall. And I think that a lot of that comes to A, inconsistency in putting things out, B, just trying to continue to improve like my attitude and the way that I present myself to people. And the biggest one, I think, is just short form content. I don't think that I had that funnel opened up to get more people into this community. So I think that 60K YouTube subs is something that I would be very, very happy reaching in 2026. Bynx Bants, you're watching that right now. I want to get 50 Bynx Bants videos this year. Just a couple off of one per week. I want to be really, really consistent with it, but also a little bit of like wiggle room in case something crazy comes up. I want to put out 100 short form videos this year. I think that that is not even that big of a goal. I'm hoping to break through that much before the end of the year, especially if the shorts start doing really well, that I need to just put more time effort into doing. Another one I put in here is to get a 40,000 plus view video. I used to have a lot of videos that would hit like that number pretty consistently, and that's fallen off as my popularity has gotten a little bit lower over the years, as well as Marvel Snap's popularity. But I do think with things like Bynx Bants, where I'm bringing a little bit more evergreen style content with the like featured section that I start every one of these with, could be something that could be good. And just I think that trying to improve and get more people in here, continuing to try and make better content, I think that's something that can happen. And the last one is something that I heard from John Cena, which is a really interesting thing to hear. He had his last match at the end of this last year, and he was doing like this big podcast circuit. And I think that John Cena is just one of the coolest people to listen to. I think he has such a cool perspective on life. And one thing that he said during that podcast circuit that really stood out to me was that a big goal that he has with like most things that he does with life, to be present with curiosity. That's a big mantra that I want to have for myself, that when I'm sitting down to stream or sitting down to make a video, when I'm sitting down to edit anything or produce anything on this channel, I want to be present and really there in the moment. I want to be curious and open to different ideas, and I want to have purpose. I want to have a goal. That's just like the big overall of my goals for this year. I know there's a little bit, you know, maybe not something you're interested in, but I think that, you know, being accountable for myself and being accountable for being the best version of myself is the best thing that I can do for me and for you. Thank you so much. I hope that you guys enjoyed the little Wizard Bend Road, one of my favorite pictures that I've seen from the new video. But boy, oh boy, it's 2026. It's the year of the Bynx, baby. You hear it? Yes, you do. That's the song. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bynx.